Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. I've lived in my house for over 20 years and never had any issues with neighbors or the homeowners association. That all changed when a new homeowners association's president took over last year. The first sign of trouble was when I got a notice in the mail about upcoming renovations to community roads. It mentioned adding speed bumps, fixing potholes, and even expanding some roads. I didn't think much of it at the time. Our roads could use some improvements, so this seemed like a good thing. A few weeks later, I awoke to the loud rumbling of heavy machinery outside. I looked out the window to see bulldozers, backhoes, and construction crews lining my street. It was barely 7 a.m. on a Saturday, yet they were already hard at work. I threw on some clothes and rushed outside to figure out what was happening. That's when I spotted the Homeowners Association's president directing the crews, and they were starting to tear up my driveway. "Hey, what's going on here?" I shouted over the noise. The Homeowners Association's president sauntered over casually. "Oh, good morning. We're just expanding this road to allow more traffic flow." I gestured angrily at my mangled driveway. "This isn't a road, it's my private driveway. You can't just start digging it up without permission." The president blinked in confusion. "Are you sure? This lines up perfectly with Elm Street. It'll connect right to the intersection." I wanted to tear my hair out dealing with this guy. "Yes, I'm absolutely sure. This property has been in my family for years. The driveway leads to my house, not any public street." The president scratched his head, seemingly baffled by this concept of private property. I decided to take a different approach. "Gentlemen," I called out to the construction crew, "you are clearly demolishing my driveway without consent. This is private property. Please stop immediately." The crew members looked uncertainly between me and the Homeowners Association's president, but upon seeing clear proof of the driveway leading directly to my home, they shut off the machines and started backing away. The president tried to protest. "Now hold on. We had this whole area marked for expansion. Are you sure this isn't part of the new road?" I got right up in his face. "I'm absolutely positive. This is my driveway on my private property. I never agreed to any so-called road expansion. You need to leave immediately." Sensing things were about to escalate, the foreman of the construction crew intervened. "Sorry for the confusion, sir. We'll get out of your way now." He promptly ordered his men to pack up while I watched with satisfaction. The Homeowners Association's president grumbled with irritation, reluctant to admit his mistake. But with his crew abandoning the work, he had no choice but to acquiesce. "My apologies for the mix-up," he offered half-heartedly before storming off. I was left fuming, staring at the torn-up rubble that used to be my driveway. I couldn't believe the Homeowners Association's president tried to seize a chunk of my property without any warning or legal grounds. After consulting a lawyer, I sent an official letter to the Homeowners Association's board, demanding they pay for repairs and damages. I also noted that any future work must be approved by property owners beforehand. The Homeowners Associations pushed back at first, still trying to insist the driveway was a public road, but I stood firm, making clear I was prepared to take legal action if necessary. After a month of contentious back and forth, I finally reached a settlement with the Homeowners Associations. They agreed to reimburse me for the full driveway repairs, plus an additional $5,000 for emotional distress and violation of property rights. I also received written assurance that any construction on my land would require explicit approval. The Homeowners Association's president even called me personally to apologize for his gross overstep. Apparently, the board had reprimanded him and threatened his position if he ever pulled something like this again. I happily accepted his apology, though I suspect it had more to do with protecting his job than actual remorse. Nonetheless, the conflict reached a satisfactory resolution in my favor. The repairs took some time, but eventually I had my property restored to its original state. The Homeowners Associations has respected the settlement terms and kept their distance ever since. I may not always see eye to eye with the Homeowners Associations board, but at least they now understand that my property is strictly off limits without permission. This experience taught me the importance of defending your rights as a homeowner. Even Homeowners Associations leaders can make careless mistakes, presuming authority where they have none. I'm just grateful I caught this mistake in time before they demolished my entire front yard. It goes to show you can fight City Hall, or in this case, the Homeowners Associations. All it takes is a little persistence and an unwillingness to let others steamroll you. This homeowners association's president learned that lesson the hard way once I confronted him, and you can bet anytime roadwork comes up again, they'll be asking my approval first. The next one is a pro-revenge story. Me, 24M. Me, my mother, 50F. Mom, my brother, 23M. Bro, my sister, 30F. Sis, cheating stepdad, 45M. Chris, stepdad's co-worker, 25F. Betty, the other woman, tilde 40F. Darla. This may be a long one, apologies in advance. I moved in with my mom after her marriage of 25 years with my bio dad was ended. He was a manipulative a-hole, but that's another story. Shortly after the divorce, my mom introduced me to her boyfriend at the time, Chris. Now my mom worked as a correctionals officer at the county jail. The boyfriend was a former inmate, in for a DUI. That should have been the first red flag, but my mom was grieving a long marriage, and I didn't want to push the subject. Chris seemed to make her happy, and that was enough for me. Me, bro, and sis all moved in with mom and Chris, and we seemed to get along okay. Chris and I bonded a bit over our love of video games, and all seemed well. That is, until 2017. Due to Chris's prior DUI, he had to go in regularly for probationary checkups at the courthouse. One day, he didn't return, and we got a little worried. We then received a phone call from him from Texas. Turns out, when he arrived at the courthouse that day, he was jumped by the FBI. His family from Texas was implicated on a number of gang and drug-related crimes, and due to a situation where he was in a vehicle during a drug handoff, he was on the hook as well. He ended up agreeing to testify against his family members in exchange for a shorter sentence and allowed to be out of prison before the trial. My mom was distraught, and over the course of many phone calls over a year, they worked out their marriage plans when he returned. His store owner at the DQ he worked at allowed him to come back as well, back to his store manager position. Soon after, the drinking started. Now obviously because of his DUI, Chris was clearly no stranger to drinking. He began to drink more and more to the point where he was consuming half a 24-pack of beer a day. Chris was a mean drunk. He regularly started fights when wasted, and while they never got physical, he wasn't exactly kind with his words. My mom enabled his behavior for several years, saying the stress was getting to him from work and from the upcoming trial. Finally, after several years, my mom had enough. Chris came home extremely drunk one night, and my mom confronted him. She asked if he'd been drinking, and when he didn't deny it, she kicked him out. He went to live with a friend temporarily. The next morning, Mom asked us to help gather a few of his essentials, so that he didn't have to re-enter the home until he was sober. While we were gathering his things, we heard a knock at the front door. We opened it to find Betty, one of Chris's co-workers and someone I went to high school with. She told my mom she had something important to share. After sitting my mom down and telling her not to share where she got the info from, Betty told my mom about how Chris was cheating on my mom with Darla, how he regularly had Darla perform sexual acts in and around his workplace, how Betty had caught them, and how Chris told her that if she ever told my mom, he'd fire her. He was the store manager. And finally, how Darla was pregnant. My mom was angry. After the initial shock wore off, she told us to round up all of Chris's things and to dump it outside. We took everything of his out of the house and tossed it all in the alley behind our house. Chris had no reason or ability to return to the house. It was rented with only my mom on the paperwork, so no issues there. In the meantime, she called and confronted him. He confessed to the entire affair, and that he was happy Darla was pregnant because that meant he'd finally have a child of his own. Mom refused to have more kids. We three were massive strains on her body. She likely wouldn't survive anymore. He refused to apologize for any of his actions. My mom arranged for him to collect his items from the alley, with an officer present, and he left our lives. The revenge. Now, my mom clearly wanted to dust her hands of him and move on. She was already quite emotional from the whole ordeal and wanted nothing more from him. But sis, bro, and I had other ideas. First, we called his workplace. DQ operates as an independently owned franchise, and the owner of this branch owned several branches in the area. He was also a good friend. We informed him of the sexual acts being performed on the premises, and he went through the processes of getting Chris booted from his position and barred him from any of the branches in the area. Funnily, Betty got his position after he left, and now runs a tight and clean ship. Chris no longer had a job or a place to live, and so went to live with Darla in a town about an hour away. We found out that he started working at another DQ in that town and informed the owner of that location of the situation. It took significantly longer due to there being no current indecent actions occurring there, but eventually he lost that job too. Soon after, Chris began driving around our neighborhood, seemingly stalking my mom and our family, probably because of his job loss. Now, due to the whole situation in Texas, he never had his probation lifted for his DUI, and thus still did not have a license. He never had to drive when he lived with us, since work was local and we could drive him as needed. But here was, clearly driving around by himself when he shouldn't be. We contacted the police and informed them about Darla's vehicle in our neighborhood, and that we believed Chris was driving it, without a license. We told them to pull over the vehicle next time they see it, as it would likely be driving again. Sure enough, a few weeks later, we were told that Chris indeed was pulled over and sent back to the local jail for driving without a license and while intoxicated. The police also did a search of the home he was staying at and found several guns at the premises. Since he was a felon, he was not legally allowed to have weaponry on the premises, meaning there was more jail time tacked on. By the time his jail time had finished, it was just in time for him to be sent back to incarceration in Texas for the trial. Chris's son was born while Chris was in prison. Darla evidently realized what an absolute ass Chris was, and cut ties with him while he was in prison. During his prison time, Chris started sending tons of letters to my mom, stating how sorry he was, pleading to take him back, and ranting about how it wasn't his fault, all in the same letter, mind you. Mom burnt every one of them. We moved on, moving out of state. Chris evidently got out of prison some years ago and now lives in Kansas, struggling and fighting child support, which Darla sued him for. Mom now has a new boyfriend who treats her right and cares a lot more than Chris ever did. Bro and sis moved on and out, and I still live with Mom, assisting her with the newly purchased home that we've been renovating. Life's looking okay. I was reminded of this by a chat with a coworker about cheaters, and thought to post it here for others to enjoy. The next one is a petty revenge story. I rented a house at the beginning of the year, but I couldn't stay there a minute longer. It was a crappy house, and everything broke down days after I moved in. I had major leaks, flooding in the kitchen, mold, etc. I told the landlord and she said, "Fix it yourself, it's not even a big issue." After 3 months, I gave her a 1-month notice that I was moving out. I told her she could have the deposit since I was breaching the contract. The contract stated that I would rent her house for a year. But no, she said I had to pay her the rent for that month too. It's already included in the contract. In the case of moving out, I don't have to pay for the rent for the last month I live there, because it's already included in the deposit. She also wanted fees for her time to look for a new renter. Hell no, I wasn't doing that. I consulted with my real estate agent friend and showed her the contract. I asked for her help on what I could do. I didn't want to pay for the last month's rent since I was only there for 10 days. My friend told me that the landlord couldn't do that, and that she had already overcharged me for the deposit stated in the law. But since I had signed the contract, I still had to give her the deposit. However, I could sue her for overcharging me and extortion. So I sued her. I didn't have to pay the last month's rent, and she had to pay a big fine. The next one is a malicious compliance story. A lot of lawyers are making the news with their bad decisions, which reminded me of a story I hope you enjoy. I had an appearance for a pretrial hearing in a small-town court. This hearing went okay for my client. The other attorney, opposing counsel, or OC, did not react strongly, positively, or negatively, which made sense because the decision was basically a 60-40 split of what we were disputing. Neither of us was a big winner or loser. His demeanor changed drastically after the judge dismissed us. In the hallway, he stomped up to me while I was discussing next steps with my client and said we needed to talk. I said something along the lines of, "As soon as I'm done with the client." OC huffed off and I finished my talk. To set the stage for this next part, I am almost exactly average for height/weight. OC was probably about 4 inches taller, 60 pounds heavier, and 30 years my senior. Imagine a big belly, drinker's nose, and some flop sweat if he saw the elevator was out of service. So I said goodbye to the client and walked over. Without any small talk, he gave me something close to, "You think you can just walk in here and act like that?" This was confusing because nothing really went great or terrible for me or him, so I said something like, "Act like what?" This really set him off, and I pinky swear I was not trying to antagonize him with that question. OC then says verbatim, "You better hope I never see you outside this court because I will kick the shit out of you." What he did not know was that I really enjoy fighting. After seeing the Power Rangers punch those clay soldiers, I begged my parents for karate classes. After that, it was judo in HS, BJJ in college, and an attempt to fight in the UFC after college. I thought I was tough right up until actual professionals hit me. Then I thought, wow, I'm actually a huge pussy, and went for a graduate degree. So I told OC, sounds good. We need to sign some forms first, though. Here's my availability. Let's find a time and meet at this gym. Do you want boxing or grappling gloves? I thought for sure he would make up an excuse, but he agreed. So we set up a time and everything. The small-town court gossip mill did its thing, and a couple of court staff showed up to watch the fight. In an anticlimactic turn of events, OC was a no-call, no-show. The next time OC and I appeared before the judge, who did not show up to watch the fight, the judge made a snarky comment like, "Is this really worth fighting over?" And OC didn't have anything to say to that. The next one is an entitled people story. Almost 2 months ago, my younger sister, 23, aka Lucy for this, and her fiancé held a big dinner event with all of our family, his family, our mutual friends, their friends, and every soul she knew because they had some big news they wanted to tell everyone. They found out a few weeks prior that they are expecting. Of course, we were all very excited for them. As soon as everything settled down, Lucy stood up and made a toast to me. She said she was thankful for having a bigger in size and in heart sister like me to gift my wedding dress to her since she is getting married in November. I'm only 136 and did not think I was actually fat at the time. I, shocked and embarrassed, tried to ask her what she meant by that as politely as possible. My stepmom responded with, "Don't worry, it's just one of those sister teasings you have never been able to comprehend, and for us to all talk about it later." It was all too much for me, and I was humiliated by everything and burst into tears in front of everyone and went to the bathroom while my stepmom said, "See?" and mocked me, telling me to grow up. They both did end up coming into the bathroom after 30 minutes. Lucy said I ruined the most exciting news of a lifetime, but could not possibly understand that since my fiancé and I want to continue a child-free lifestyle. I asked her much more rudely why the hell she thought I would be giving her my wedding dress. Apparently, her and my stepmom had talked and decided that since my wedding was not until March, and since I am heavier than them, I would not mind just loaning my dress, that I have not even picked up yet from alterations, or buying another one, since I had saved and invested with my big degrees into my wedding that I can afford special alterations. I double majored in aerospace engineering and theater, and my fiancé majored in physics and philosophy. Thanks to my degree and skills, I designed my wedding dress. Both of them have always hated this. She also said that it's okay if it was not altered because I am so much bigger there would not be any alterations needed for her to fit my dress. I told her absolutely not. Lucy then said that if I don't give it to her, then I am no longer a bridesmaid. I told her that's fine and left the bathroom. Everyone except my dad, Lucy's fiancé, and my fiancé left. They consoled me and said they would talk to my stepmom and sister about everything, and I left. The next day, both my sister and my stepmom blew up my phone saying I am destroying the family and clearly don't care about my soon-to-be niece or nephew by not allowing my sister to have my dress. I never responded and ended up getting a group of family and Lucy's friends on their side harassing me on social media, phone, email, and in person for a week. It only stopped because my BIL told Lucy he would be leaving her if she did not cut it out. Things have been quiet ever since then until tonight when I got a call from my sister saying she has scheduled an abortion tomorrow for her baby girl since she can't fit into her dress. She then said that I could stop all of this if I just honored her simple request of giving her my dress. This is where I am for sure, not just wrong, but a major idiot. I don't care if a person gets an abortion or not. What you do with your body is up to you. And I don't blame anyone for getting one done. From experience, making that decision is one of the hardest things to make in life. But it did piss me off, and I told her that if she was aborting her baby over a dress, then she does not deserve to have any children, and her baby girl can be a gift from God to another person who will actually love her and not place fabric over her. She responded, since I am child-free, I don't know what a good parent is, the length of a mother's love, or be able to provide that to kids and could never be better than her. I hung up on her, and she sent me a text with a picture of documents showing when, where, and the time of the appointment. The text said I had until 11:30 a.m., the time of the appointment, to change my mind. I called her fiancé and told him everything and sent him screenshots of the text she sent. He said she had no clue about the abortion or the gender of their baby and was going straight home to talk to her about it. They did get into a huge fight, and now my BIL is staying in our guest room for a while and, very understandably, looks very red and swollen in the face from crying. None of us can sleep now. While I questioned her moral choice to pick fabric over a baby, it's the same question I'm asking myself. It feels extreme for me to be this protective over it, and at the cost of a baby that is wanted, already loved by us, and can be given a great life with a great father. Am I the a-hole? I honestly am thinking about just giving in and giving her my dress, but I just have to get some outside views and input on this situation. Any thoughts would be very helpful, and thank you so much in advance. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.